Dust to velvets, the Scribe's inheritance from Karachi's streets to Oxford halls, unveiling a lost legacy of art and survival, by Sirat Al-Oraj Abro. The air in the grand hall shimmered with the hushed intensity of immense value. Gold leaf edges of rare books caught the meticulously placed spotlights. Emeralds from a forgotten dynasty glittered with cold fire, and centuries of accumulated history stood silent witness around the room. The annual London exhibition was more than a display of antiques. It was a gathering place for the world's quiet elite, where whispered bids settled the fate of priceless possessions. Every painting, every intricate piece of Kundan jewellery, every possession of a famous dead poet was curated to tell a story of wealth, culture, and power, a complex narrative meticulously arranged by Naira Sawar. Naira Sawar possessed an enduring beauty that transcended the fleeting trends of her clientele. She stood at a moderate height, perhaps 5 feet 5 inches, her posture impossibly straight, a silent testament to decades spent commanding attention rather than seeking it. Her dark, expressive eyes, framed by precise kohl, were the most Pakistani feature remaining, holding a warmth that was carefully rationed and a sharp intelligence that was always on display. Her skin, though now subtly managed by the best of global cosmetics, carried the subtle, rich tone of her heritage. The dark green, floor-length coat suit she wore was tailored to perfection, lending her an air of severe, almost military elegance. Her career, which had sprung from a single, desperate moment of recognising an overlooked piece of value in the dusty markets of her youth, had blossomed into the Sawar Collection, a billion-dollar enterprise built entirely on finding beauty, history, and profit where others saw only junk. She was the final and most compelling piece in her own dazzling exhibition, and the guests she welcomed were the only people on earth worthy of seeing it. The guests circulating the hall represented the pinnacle of global capital and curated taste. This was not a crowd of fleeting celebrity, but one of entrenched power. Saudi oil magnates discussing valuations with Swiss banking heirs, European duchesses vying for Mughal textiles against Californian tech billionaires, and quiet, powerful art fund managers from New York, all united by their shared pursuit of the irreplaceable. Naira's list was carefully pruned each year, ensuring every hand she shook belonged to someone who understood not just the monetary value of her antiques, but the cultural and historical weight of owning them, a weight she herself had learned to lift from the ground up. For Naira's clientele, securing a piece from her collection was less about art acquisition and more about social coronation. Attending the annual exhibition was, in itself, a definitive symbol of inclusion, a quiet, indispensable statement to their peers that they possessed the taste, the wealth, and the exclusivity required to stand among the global elite. To own a Sawar piece meant owning verified history, instantly elevating the collector beyond mere money into the realm of legacy. They didn't just buy antiques, they bought the right to be recognised within Naira's rarefied world. Surrounded by potentates and billionaires, Naira felt a quiet, delicious irony. She knew the secret they did not. The true brilliance of her collection was not its value, but its distance from her origin. The chaotic energy of the bazaar, the desperate hustle, the keen eye for the overlooked opportunity was not merely her past, it was the invisible, humming engine beneath the entire Sawar collection. The memory of her small, sun-baked home and the gnawing anxiety of every meagre rupee was not a ghost she banished, but the source of power she carried silently in her bones, ensuring she would never, ever return to that scarcity. With the ease of a queen navigating her court, Naira moved fluidly from one cluster of high-profile guests to the next, her smile never faltering as she dispensed calculated charm. But as she completed her circuit, her steps slowed, then froze entirely at a hushed, shadowed corner of the gallery. Here, separated from the European silks and Ming porcelain, was a small, focused display of items from her homeland. Worn wooden boxes etched with intricate Nakashi designs, delicate silver jewellery typical of Balochistan, and a stack of antique Urdu books bound in faded leather. The sight was immediate, sharp, and visceral. For a brief, unguarded second, the polished shell cracked, and a deep, unexpected surge of hurt tightened around her heart. A heavy, familiar pain connected to the scarcity, the vulnerability, and the harsh lessons of the life she had bought her way out of. Her eyes fixed on a Nakashi box, identical in size and style to one her mother had kept in the shabby trunks. A box she had once tried and realised to use to secure her first desperate fortune. The memory was instantaneous and sharp, a flash of sunlight in a cramped room, the weight of the box in her own 13-year-old hands, and the rough feel of her grandfather's coarse shawl beside her. She heard the wheezing sound of his hookah, and her own insistent young voice asking about the box's history, its value. He'd only smoked hard, refusing to meet her gaze, until her persistence broke his silence. His words, low, dismissive, and utterly crushing, seared through her mind. "My child, I think this is worthless. Your father only loves to keep them, but he is as useless as this box." The humiliation and the lesson in worthlessness hit her with the force of a physical blow. Just as the memory threatened to pull her under, a precise American-accented voice broke through the haze. "Naira? Apologies, but your next appointment is ready." Her manager and PA, Michael Parker, stood a respectful distance away, his expression neutral, but his interruption a clear signal. Naira blinked, the London gallery snapping back into focus, and the expensive Pakistani artefacts became silent, valuable objects once more. The door to the office remains closed for the duration. "Can I have a brief introduction of Mr. Hill? As you know, I don't want to sound dumb in front of anyone, especially a media person," inquired Naira in her usual composed tone. Michael leaned in slightly, lowering his voice to a conspiratorial murmur. "Peter Hill, highly respected history and arts journalist, writes for the Global Review. He's 37, based out of New York, but he flies for his stories. Crucially, he's not a finance writer. He's not here to quiz you on your margins or your net worth. He focuses on provenance and personal narrative, the story behind the object. He's been chasing this interview for nearly a year, so he's very invested. He sees your collection, and perhaps your life, as a major piece of overlooked history. Just give him the compelling backstory, Naira, and you'll have him." Naira muttered softly, acknowledging Michael's briefing without breaking her stride. The click of her black, high-gloss shoes echoed precisely on the marble as she moved the few steps toward her private office. With every step, a sense of immense, calculated release settled over her. The world is going to know. The secret she had so fiercely guarded, the raw, impoverished truth of the old Pakistani 13-year-old Naira, was finally going to be revealed. After all these years, the story she had carried, not as a burden but as a hidden source of her ruthless strength, was about to become public. She had decided. Today, the collector herself would become the most fascinating antique on display. Michael Parker ushered Peter Hill into the small, elegantly appointed office. The room was dominated by a large, antique rosewood desk, upon which Peter had already set his recording equipment. He was mid-30s, dressed in a sharp but slightly rumpled suit, and carried the patient, observant intensity of a man used to waiting for the truth. He stood immediately as Naira entered, his gaze fixed entirely on her. "Ms. Sarwar," Peter greeted her, extending his hand. "Thank you. After a year of emails and calls, it's an honour." Naira took his hand, a brief, firm clasp. "The honour is mine, Mr. Hill. Please, have a seat." She settled into the high-backed velvet chair behind the desk, positioning the desk as a subtle barrier. Michael quietly closed the heavy oak door, sealing them inside. "Michael tells me you're interested in history, not finance. That simplifies things." Peter smiled, a genuine, focused look. "I am interested in how history accrues value. Your collection is the result of immense labour, but I believe the most valuable piece you possess is your own story, Miss Sarwar. The story of how a young girl in Pakistan learned to see worth where others saw only trash." He gestured to the recorder. "Shall we begin at the beginning?" "You asked for the beginning, Mr. Hill," Naira stated simply, leaning forward just enough to make the movement feel deliberate. "The beginning isn't here in London. It starts with the absolute truth of a small, sun-baked home in Pakistan, the home with the dusty storeroom, and a tarnished brass column that belonged to a history my family had decided was useless."